Hello, my dear students, and the rest of the learners. Welcome to part 15 of a 41-part series of tutorials in Fundamentals of Object-Oriented Programming in Java. In this tutorial, we are going to look at what we call the sequential control structures. My name is Memeji M. You can simply call me Emily Swap. In this tutorial, we are going to learn what control structures are. In other words, I'm going to introduce control structures, and then once we know what control structures are, we shall then proceed and look at one type of control structures which we call the sequence. So, what is a control structure? A control structure, simply put, is a set of statements that dictate how a program will behave under certain circumstances. The control structures belong to one of the two families. That is, those control structures that test the values and determine what code will be executed based on those values. And the second one is those control structures that loop, performing identical operations multiple times. In control structures, decision-making is the process of evaluating the value of an expression and performing a task if the value comes out to be true and another if task is false. Therefore, a control structure can also be said to be a block of programming that analyzes variables and chooses a direction in which to go based on given parameters. A systematic procedure that is used to compute something is called an algorithm. Remember, in the previous presentations in this series, I said that an algorithm is simply that outline of how a program will be executed. In other words, what exactly will be done by a program or by the compiler or translator and how in a certain order. So, an algorithm indicates the flow. It illustrates how the set of statements will be executed. And therefore, we can say that an algorithm is a description of how to do something. The three categories of control structures that we use in Java programming are the sequential control structure, which we also call block. And sometimes it is not treated as a structure because ordinarily every program or most of the programs will have sequence set of statements. The second one is consecutive control structure, or what we call the branching. And the third one is called iterative, which is also called looping or repetitive. So, what is a sequential control structure, or what we call the block? When we speak about sequential control structure, my dear students and the rest of the learners, is simply the list of statements that are executed in the order in which they are written. So, if you code a set of instructions from number 1 to the last one, then if there's no selection which is done and there's no repetition that is carried out, but the instructions are simply executed in the order in which they are listed, then that is what we call the sequential. And in all the presentations, from the first presentation in this series to the 14th, all the programs that we've been learning, all the programs that have demonstrated, implement what we call the sequential or block control structure. So anytime you write a program with instructions flowing from the first one to the last one, without having to make any decision as to whether to execute a set of instructions or not, or whether to repeat any statement or not, if the set of instructions are simply executed in the order in which they are listed, from the top to the bottom, from instruction number 1 to the last one, without making any selection or any iteration, then that is what we call the sequential control structure. But when we speak about selective control structure, when we speak about selective control structure, which we also call the branching, we are simply speaking about a selection control structure, or we are simply speaking about the set of instructions that have been written, allowing a program to select between two or more alternative paths of execution. And the examples of such structures are the if-else, else-if, switch. When we speak about the iterative control structures, or what we call the looping or repetitive control structures, these include the while, do while, for. Each of these control structures is considered to be a single statement, but each is in fact a structured statement that can contain one or more other statements inside itself. So, the following are 6 control structures that are available in Java. We have the block, which we are also calling the sequence. We have the if statement or if structure. We have the switch statement or switch structure. We have the while loop, the do while loop, and last one, we have what we call the for loop. So let's look now at sequential control structure in depth. It is also called a block. The block is the simplest type of structured statement, and its purpose is simply to group a sequence of statements into a single statement. The format of a block is as follows. We have the statements. Simple. We have the opening brace, then we have the statements from the first one to the last one executed in that order up to the end, where we have the closing brace. Therefore, it consists of a sequence of statements that are enclosed between a pair of braces, that is the right brace and the left brace. In fact, it is possible for a block to contain no statements at all. Such a block is called an empty block and can actually be useful at times. An empty block consists of nothing but an empty pair of braces. The block statements usually occur inside other statements, where their purpose is to group together several statements into a unit. However, a block can be legally used whenever a statement can occur. A block is simply a sequence of statements enclosed inside a pair of braces. The block statement by itself really doesn't affect the flow of control in a program. The following is therefore a sample program implementing sequence structure to compute the total marks for a trainee in 4 subjects. So we have the comment, program for computing sum of 4 scores. And then we have the package being called total block structure. And remember, the name of the package should not have any spaces, so the rules of variables apply. Then we have import java.util.scanner. Just as I have said consistently and repeatedly in this series of tutorials, in the sequence of the series of tutorials in this topic, is that import java.util.scanner tells compiler to use the scanner class from the package. Then we have public class total block structure. Remember, total block structure is simply a name that I'm giving for the purposes of helping us know what this class is going to do. So it is a name that you can replace, but always ensure that any name you use is meaningful and it can tell exactly what the class is doing. we have the main method, which is main. So public static void main. My dear students and the rest of the learners, remember, if you don't know the meaning of this statement, you can go back to the previous presentations in this series, and then you'll be able to see the explanation of what this part does. So we have public static void main. And of course, the arguments there. And then we define the main, or we write the set of statements that would like to be executed by the compiler or the translator within the main. And always remember that the way in which the statements are listed under the main is exactly what determines how the flow will be. So we begin by declaring the variables. So this statement is declaring local variables, which are four. They are of type integer or whole numbers. They include programming, literacy, maths, EP, and sum. In fact, these are not four variables, but they are five variables. We have five variables where one of the variables is for sum, but the number of scores are four. That is for programming, literacy, maths, and entrepreneurship or EP. Then we define the object of type scanner, that is scanner input equals to new scanner system in. Remember, the syntax must remain. The way the statement looks remain. Then we have the statement that is to be displayed on our monitor or the screen, which is going to be enter the mark attained by the trainee in programming unit and move one line below. So this statement is simply for displaying the statement on the screen, enter the mark attained by the trainee in programming unit. Next is to read the value that has been entered, and we read it using the function next int. So we have input dot next integer or next int. Whatever you get, whatever value that is entered by the user, assign it in the memory location that is called programming. The next statement prompts the user to enter the mark that has been attained by the trainee in digital literacy unit, and then move one line below. And then we read the value. We are reading a whole number, and therefore we are going to read the value, of course, through the input object. And therefore the statement reads input.nextInt. Whatever value that is going to be generated or captured, that value should be assigned in the memory location that is called literacy. The next statement is to prompt the user to enter the mark attained by the trainee in months unit, and then move one line below. Then within the value that has been attained by the trainee in months, using the statement input.nextInt, whatever value that is going to be generated or whatever value that is going to be captured, let it be stored in the variable or in the memory location called months. Next is to prompt the user to enter the mark attained by the trainee in entrepreneurship unit and move one line below or write a new line. Next is to read the value. So the value is read and assigned in the memory location that is called EP. The next statement here is to compute the sum of the numbers. And therefore, this statement simply means you are telling the translator to read the value that is entered in the memory location called entrepreneurship or EP, and that value to the value that has been stored in the memory location called months, then and that value to the value that has been stored in the memory location called literacy, and finally add the value in the memory location called programming, and the results that are going to be generated be stored in the memory location that is called sum. The next statement is to display is to display the total on the screen. So this statement simply tells the translator to display the statement on the screen. The total score for this trainee is pick the value in the memory location called sum and display it on the screen, followed by out of 400 marks, and then move one line below. So this statement, my dear students and the rest of the learners, simply tells the compiler to display the total score for this trainee is, then pick the value that has been stored in the memory location called the sum and display it out at that position, followed by out of 400 marks. So if, for example, the sum is 150, this statement will read, the total score for this trainee is 150 out of 500 marks. And then we end our program at that point. So, my dear students and the rest of the learners, let's see how we can code this program using Java or using the Eclipse IDE. So what do we need to do? What you have to do next is now to load Java in the computer. That is, load the IDE for coding our Java programs. And in this case, our IDE is Eclipse. So let's proceed. We load Eclipse, and then we proceed to code this program that we have already discussed so that we can see how it will behave. And therefore, to start Eclipse, you click on the Start button, and then you can click on All Apps, or just scroll from the menu bar to see whether you see the name of your program. So here it is, Eclipse. We click on Eclipse, and then we are going to choose Eclipse IDE for Java developers 2024. And as usual, you wait for the loading process to complete. As the loading continues, the compiler will always inform you what is happening. In other words, not the compiler, but you see the progress of loading. So we wait. You can see it says starting Eclipse. So you wait for Eclipse to be fully loaded, and here it is. It has been fully loaded. So this is the editor, but then you can see there is nowhere to type your code. So what you now need to do is to create a project for your file. So you click on File menu, point on New, and then click on Project. That is Java project. So let's click on Java project. Once you click on Java project, the next thing is to give your project a name. So how do you give your project a name, or which name are we going to give our project? So let's call it Total Block Structure. So that is the name of my project, Total Block Structure. Then from there, don't bother setting anything else. Just click on Finish. So here we have our project. Our project has been added here. So the next step is to create our file inside this project. So we are going to right click on Total Block Structure, project name, and then we point on New, and then this time round, we click on Class. So you click on Class. Once you click on a class, you now give your class a name. You give your class a name. So, which name are we going to give our class? So the name for my class will still be total block structure. Total block structure. Modifiers are public, so we retain public. And then below here, you can see we are being asked, which method stubs would you like to create? Let's click on public static void main because that is our main function header. And then from there, we click on finish. Remember, my dear students and the rest of the learners, this is the procedure that you follow to create a Java program. So what do you do next? So once you have your package, total block structure, the next thing for you to do is to type the statement import java dot until dot scanner. And then from there, what you need to do is to key in your program or to code your program. Remember, you can always indent your program nicely so that your program becomes more readable and easy to understand. You can remove this comment from there. So what I'm going to do is, because I've already explained the program and what each part does, I'll just copy and paste my program here. Remember, it's always advisable for you to write your program somewhere, for example, using an editor. Dry run it from there, and then you can always paste it within your IDE. So I'm going to paste my program here, but remember, you can always type it yourself step by step. So I already have my program. Here in my IDE. So this is my program. So I'll just copy the part for the program. That is the body. Because the rest I have. So I'll just paste my program, my code here. I'll just paste my code. And then you can always identify nicely. Remember, I am simply pasting my code here because I have already done the coding. And for the purposes of helping you learn how to code without taking too long or too much time, that's why I'm simplifying that task of typing each statement one at a time on my editor by simply pasting my code here. Then from there, you can remove any unnecessary instructions or symbols that you don't require. Remember, you should always indent your program nicely. So there we are. That's our program. So once you are done with typing, you save your program and then you run it. So let's run our program. How do you run the program? You click on Run menu. I know you may ask, are we not going to compile the program? The advantage with Java is that as you continue or as you type your instructions in Java, Java makes use of an interpreter to check and confirm your instructions whether they are syntactically correct, one line at a time. So Java combines both a compiler and an interpreter. So there's no need of compiling, like the way you would have done for other programming languages. So in this case, just click on Run menu, and then you click on Run. If there are any syntax errors, we shall be told. Now, my dear students and the rest of the learners, you can see that our program has no errors, and therefore it is already prompting us to enter the value for the programming unit. And therefore, we are going to key our value, for example, 56. Then you press enter. Next statement, enter the mark attained by the trainee in digital literacy. We can enter, for example, 21. You press enter. My dear students and the rest of the learners, kindly note, we are learning about sequential or block control structure, and we have said the instructions are executed in the order of listing. And that's exactly what you can see. We have begun this statement here. Enter the mark attained by the trainee in programming unit is this part. Then we have keyed in our value. Then it has taken us to the next statement, prompting us to enter the mark attained by the trainee in digital literacy. Then we have entered in the score. Next, it has asked us to enter the mark attained by the trainee in months unit. And that's where we are here. And then we are going to read the value. So we are going to key in a value like 89. You press enter. You can see we are now in this line. We are being asked to enter the mark attained by the trainee in entrepreneurship unit, and then within the value. So our expectation is that once we key in, for example, the 6, and press enter, the translator or the compiler is going, or the processor is going to do the computation for the values we have entered, assign that value in sum, and then it will proceed straight away and display this statement. So let's press enter and see what is going to be displayed. You can see we are being told the total score for this trainee is 222 out of 400. So simply, my dear students and the rest of the learners, when we speak about sequence control structure, we are simply speaking about how instructions are simply executed in the order of listing from the top to the bottom, as you have seen. This program has begun by asking us to enter the marks attained by the trainee programming unit. Then it has gone to the next line, which has read the value. Then it has displayed the message. Enter the mark attained by the trainee in digital literacy unit. We have entered the mark, then it has proceeded to the next instruction to enter the marks attained by the trainee in months unit. It has read the score. Then it has gone to the next instruction, which is to earn a name or letters or tell us to enter the mark attained by the trainee in entrepreneurship, which we have done. We have entered the value, it has been read. Next, the addition has been done for the value in EP, months, literacy, programming, and the results have been assigned in the memory location equal to sum. And from there, the next statement, the last one, is to display the message on the screen that the total score for this trainee is, pick the value from the total or from the variable called sum, which in this case we have seen is 222, displayed on the screen, followed by the ones out of 1 remarks. And once that has been done, the program comes to an end. So that's what sequence control structure is all about. That's why I began by saying that in real sense, sequential control structure does not really fit to be called a control structure, because ordinarily it's simply the execution of instructions in the order of listing without any repetition and without making any choice. And therefore, my dear students and the rest of the learners, that is what we call the sequence control structure. And for that reason, I want to thank you for listening to this part of the series. part of control structures. You can now proceed to watch and listen to part 16 of the 41 part series, in which you are going to learn about the if selective control structure. Congratulations, therefore, my dear students and the rest of the learners, for learning part 15 of 41 on sequential control structure in fundamentals of object-oriented programming using Java. You can access the rest of the parts in the series, as well as other computer or ICT videos, by clicking or tapping on MLSwap ICT YouTube channel below this video. To subscribe to the channel, tap on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. For any further correspondence, kindly write it to us through the email emilyswap@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me, and God bless.